Hi, good morning and welcome to you, Chloe, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm Kate from SOFT and I'm the Communications Officer. And this morning we're continuing our theme that we've had up for our latest podcast on bereavement. And yeah, we just wanted to hear your story, please, Chloe. Tell us a bit more about your journey with Penelope.
So I was 18, almost 19 when I found out I was pregnant. The pregnancy was great. It went so smoothly. Didn't even have any morning sickness or anything. I actually really enjoyed being pregnant. And then my 20-week scan, they found quiveroid plexus cysts on her brain. They did offer amnio, but I refused because of the risk of miscarrying. They scanned then every 4 weeks, and by my due date there was no more cysts on her brain. They said it could have been a chance it was Edwards or Patau's, but they said it was very unlikely because I was so young and they didn't pick up on anything else. So then Penelope was born. A button got pressed and a lot of doctors run in and took her to the other side of the room, and were working on her for about 20-30 minutes and then rushed her up to NICU. And at that point then I knew that was what it was. It wasn't anything that was it wasn't healthy, do you know what I mean? She wasn't a normal baby then because she needed so much help. So we couldn't see her then for about 3 or 4 hours while they got her set up in NICU. And whenever we did finally get up, she was just hooked to every monitor, and she was just so tiny. She was only £5.15 when she was born. So yeah, it was scary. After we got to see her, a doctor came then and had a chat with me and my husband and said that they think she has Edwards syndrome and could they do a fish test on her just to confirm it. So that was when the nightmare really began. Because I think unless you've been through it, most people think that you just get pregnant and you have a healthy baby at the end, but you don't think of all these things because I'd never ever heard of it before. So it was quite a shock, but the results came back that she definitely did have full Edwards, and then it was all doctors and different consultants coming in to check everything over. So she actually had a VSD and an ASD, which wasn't picked up on the scan. I had an excessive amount of amniotic fluid, which is also a symptom. It was never picked up on any of my scans. So I feel like a lot was missed that maybe could have prepared me better for it. But then at the same time, I'm glad nobody knew, because we would have had to fight to get her resuscitated or get her any sort of treatment other than palliative care when she was first born.
But that time would have also allowed you to prepare for the diagnosis, to prepare for what you were about to face. So yeah, I suppose there's good things and bad things about not knowing. But I know from personal experience that time spent preparing yourself is so invaluable. So you that was taken away from you. You almost reassured that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which is so tough.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the fact that they didn't pick up on so much, like even if Penelope hadn't have had Edwards, they still didn't pick up on any of the heart problems that maybe would have needed surgery when she was born. So I think a lot was taken away from us at the start. But she done really well when she was first born. We had a christening in NICU when she was about 3 days old. And she just went from strength to strength then. We went to the hospice to step down before we went home, and we stayed there for about a week. And it was just the most amazing place ever. The memories we were able to make, like taking her swimming and stuff, things that, I mean, the day of that diagnosis, things you were told was never going to happen. Like we would be lucky, we were told if she would live for 4 weeks and that her brain would shut off or she would stop breathing. But it was a really scary time, like really scary. You're just sort of sitting there waiting for her to die, basically, based on what they said, and she would have no quality of life and she wouldn't do anything. but you also have the normal baby stuff on top of that. So being a first-time mom is hard enough, never mind throwing in a load of medical issues and constant appointments and tube feeding and watching for seizures and oxygen. I mean, our house turned in very much more like a hospital than a home whenever we brought her home. But as I say, she done really, really well. She lived for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for the last year of her life, we managed to keep her out of hospital at home with us. Like, our doctors were very good, and I would just ring and get her an antibiotic if she needed it. And as I say, because we had all the equipment at home, we really were able to manage her. And she was the happiest child for everything that she had. Do you know what I mean? She just was constantly smiling, and she was the cheekiest. She was just the cheekiest wee smile ever. We used to call her a cheeky monkey.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to leave her, otherwise she would start being sick. It came to the point when she went into hospice for respite, she would start vomiting so that she could come home.
Wow.
So, yeah.
To talk about being smart, eh? She knew what was going on, and she knew how to get away. That's amazing.
Exactly. Like, it was just, I think that's the thing. Doctors just seem to think that our kids, they don't know anything, and like, what sort of life is it for them? But they have so much joy, and they love their life. They love it. So I mean, that's what annoys me the most, because people don't want to help them whenever they want to fight to be here. So then she was at our wedding and everything. We got married about 6 months before she died, and she was there. And then she took ill at the end of November in 2017. We were managing her at home, oxygen and all was fine, and then all of a sudden she just completely crashed. So we had to take her up to A&E, and they confirmed she had pneumonia from a chest x-ray. So they were going to move us to the ward that we would usually go to, and then she flatlined again. And all the doctors rushed in. They were on the phone to Penelope's pediatrician, who had said not to do anything with her, just to take her into a room and let her pass away. But I didn't want that, so we ended up getting a bed in ICU. And she was fine that night. She seemed to have really settled and stuff. And then the next day, she just, I don't know what happened. It just got too much for her. So it did. But see, the end of her life, they just didn't even want to help. Do you know what I mean? Like, I tried to say that I wanted her ventilated and stuff, and to give her body a chance to fight the infection. And they would say, like, oh, do you want me, if she resuscitates, do you want me to, or if she stops breathing, do you want me to break her ribs trying to give her CPR? Like, is that what you want for her? Like, she'll never come off life support, and if she does, what life is that for her? She's going to die anyway. So I mean, I felt very much pressured then. Now looking back, I do know it was the right time for her. Her body just couldn't have taken it. Both of her lungs were completely filled with fluid. So, but it was really difficult.
Doesn't sound like they handled it with much compassion. It sounded like they were quite sort of straightforward and very harsh about it.
Yeah, very much so.
Not recognizing your position as her mother. I mean, and how hard that must have been for you.
Exactly. And I mean, if anybody had looked at her notes and looked back at how well she had done, like, she'd had pneumonia plenty of times, but if you'd have just looked back and seen, I think even her age, to be that age, she could have realized, like, well, no, she's not like a completely like terminally sick child. She's so, yeah. Sure.
Must have made losing her all the harder, because it was under really tough circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, because it was, my whole sense of self was just being Penelope's mummy. Like, I didn't feel to myself as anything other than that. And then that was all of a sudden taken away from me. But I think it was like, I know people will probably say, well, sure, you knew she was going to die. And yes, we did know that. But at the same time, I don't think we realized how quickly it would be. And because she had been doing so well, it was sort of put to the back of her mind slightly, because we had learned to manage her, and she was just doing brilliantly. We were talking about sending her to school the following year and everything. So it was still a shock because it did happen so quickly.
And you had been given that hope because she'd lived so
Yeah.
long. You started to probably hope and wish that she was going to be one of the exceptions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, she already was anyway, because they had said 4 weeks, and very rarely will they live to a year. But obviously in our community, we know a lot different than that, because they're not just textbook babies. They don't go by what they're taught in university.
No, they're each individuals, and they have their own personalities and their own traits, and exactly. Sure. And Chloe, after losing her, how did that go? I mean, how were you and your husband?
Well, after Penelope died, we actually took her to the children's hospice, and they kept Penelope in their safe haven room. So it gave us a chance to not have to worry about people coming to the house to see us. They came there and they done all the teas and coffees, and they looked after all of us, and we were able to stay there with her until her funeral, a few days later. But it was really difficult. Everything just felt like a blur, and it put not even just Penelope's death, but Penelope's birth and her life in general had put so much pressure on mine and my husband's relationship, because it's a really high stress situation the whole way through. And we did have a lot of tough times, especially after she died. I didn't think to be honest, I don't think either of us were going to make it through it. But a month after Penelope died, I found out I was about 6 or 7 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
So we've been trying before Penelope died for a baby brother or sister for her. So then found out we were pregnant in the January. So to me, I think neither of us even began to grieve, because we didn't even have that chance. It was straight back into making sure this baby was okay, and this baby wasn't going to be born with Edward syndrome, and what would we do if she was. So we didn't grieve at all. And then we went on to have another child in 2020 in the middle of lockdown. And them pregnancies were the scariest thing ever. But I have to say, my hospital was amazing. They did scans every 4 weeks, and I got extra checks and everything. And then just me when I was 39 weeks, because they knew like my nerves wouldn't settle until the babies were in my arms. So those pregnancies were a lot more high stress, yes, but I knew, because I knew what to look out for in scans too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've been educated along the way. Of course.
So but recently, this past year, things took a lot of a massive toll on me. I ended up getting diagnosed with complex PTSD from Penelope's, her birth, her life, and her death, because it was full of traumatic experiences. But I feel like I'm getting there now. I've started trauma therapy with my psychologist, but we still haven't even got to like dealing with Penelope. It's very much dealing with everything currently to get me ready to start that sort of therapy. But I'm looking forward to actually grieving properly, instead of putting it to the back of my head and trying to get on for everybody, because I think when you see that everybody else moves on, when your child has died, you just sort of feel like, well, everybody else has forgot about her and I'm just left, and I can't sit here and cry and feel sorry for myself, because like it's not going to bring her back, and I just need to get up and get on with things for my other kids. And it's the worst thing I ever done was just ignoring it, because 2.5 years and it's your child. You can't just forget about it overnight.
But that's a good point. I mean, you did have other children. It is such a distraction. Whether it's a good distraction or a bad distraction is questionable. I think it has elements of both, but you can't just lie in bed and grieve when you have other children who have needs or who are dependent on you. So it's a really tough position to find yourself in. and I can only imagine the mixed emotions when you found out you were pregnant so soon after she passed away. And, I mean, how do you even begin to process all of that? It's just so many emotions.
Yeah, it's been so hard going. I mean, because obviously all the added hormones with the pregnancy added.
Of course, yeah.
So I think that's why my mood and everything got so low with my third, Elsie, because I had all my postnatal hormones going through, and then you're in the middle of a lockdown, and my 3-year-old, her life was already taken away because she was growing up in the middle of a lockdown and nothing was normal for us. We weren't able to keep ourselves just as busy because we weren't allowed out of the house. So, I mean, everything just sort of started to take a toll on both of us.
There's no way to hide.
No.
When you're just at home with the same four walls and the same people constantly, there's no distractions. And yeah, so it sounds like it needed to happen for you, but it just happened at a really tough time.
No, definitely.
Those circumstances.
And I think that as well, people think that whenever you lose a child and you have another one, then everything's better because it's almost like a replacement for the one you've lost, and it's far from it. Absolutely.
Yeah. No one will ever replace Penelope. She'll always be your firstborn. Yeah. And Chloe, how did you come to find Soft? I mean, tell us a bit more about that, please.
I had come across them quite early in our journey with Penelope after she was born, but never really got involved with them. I don't know why at the start. Then I was pregnant with my second Stella. I got an email from one of the trustees, Liz, about starting some sort of group, Northern Irish group up. And I just said, look, I'm pregnant and everything's a bit crazy here at the minute, but I will get in contact again. So it was the October before COVID hit. We actually then, it was the start of that year, I'd emailed Liz again to see if you were still interested. So I helped you organise the family day here in that October before COVID hit, and it was amazing. It was so good just having everybody together, because Northern Ireland's obviously a very small country and most people know everyone. So I already knew most of the families there through our journey. So it was nice getting us all together and just being able to talk with people that understand what you're going through. And then before COVID properly hit again, we were planning to have another family day here. But obviously that didn't happen. So then I seen a post put up on the Facebook page looking for peer support volunteers. So I decided to apply, and now I am a peer support volunteer with Soft.
Wow. After all you've been through, and you're still giving and you're still helping other people and you're still so involved, that's quite incredible.
I think you want your child, her name to live on and mean something, and I want people to have what I didn't have, because for a long time, Penelope, we think, because we only have one children's hospice, was the eldest living child with Edwards syndrome in Northern Ireland. So we didn't have any support here really other than the hospice. So having somebody to talk through with exactly the same condition, although it is a broad spectrum of things that can come with it, it's still nice having somebody like that. So I just want to give people what I didn't have.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Couldn't have been easy. It can't still be easy. I'm sure it brings up emotions all the time, but so wonderful that you are able to help. And like you say, Penelope's legacy lives on, which is incredible.
Definitely.
And Chloe, is there any message or anything that you'd like to say to people, having experienced what you've experienced and gone through what, you and your family have been through?
I think, especially in the early days, do as much research as you can and find the likes of Soft to talk to, and we can offer sort of any form of support or find out some answers. Although we can't offer medical advice, we can give our experience of what happened with us and our kids and what we find helpful when it comes to dealing with doctors or anybody involved. And then just having people around you who are going to be supportive. I think whenever they die, it's important just to take time for yourself and allow yourself to grieve, because I'm a prime example. You put it to the back of your head for 5 years, it doesn't work. You really do need to deal with those emotions. But yeah, just take time for yourself.
Yeah. Otherwise it could end up in being so much worse, and having a breakdown or something, which then doesn't help anyone. So yeah. Well, Chloe, thank you so much for very bravely sharing your story and sharing Penelope's life with us. It's been really fantastic to hear a bit more about her and how you came to be involved in SOFT. So we really appreciate your time this morning and chatting to us. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great.